All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and now you can see me. For a moment you couldn't, now you can. It's a Friday, it's a free-for-all, so definitely hope that you'll take an opportunity to give me a call. I've been getting some calls this week. I've been real pleased about that. Love talking to you directly. Already got some chat from Ari in the live chat. Van Hollen would, I think, have been an excellent candidate. Yeah, the question was, would Van Hollen have won? And we got some video footage from actually Al Jazeera of Senator Van Hollen, and we'll play that for you. It's actually, I think, speaking after he returned from his trip to El Salvador a couple of weeks ago, where he saw Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was illegally seized by the Trump administration and then sent to a torture prison down in El Salvador. He's not in that same prison. Apparently, he's in a less restrictive, less punitive environment, but still very unpleasant. Should be repatriated ASAP. And that's really the fight. I was talking about fights Democrats can and should wage and can win. That's clearly one of them. They've already won it in terms of in the courts. To win in the court of public opinion is going to be a little more challenging. And I'm going to get into what Democrats need to do to win in the court of public opinion. Also, the Medicare for All fight. We talked about this. Now, that is a fight they should wage, right? Because this was, are they worse than useless, showing the image of Jayapal and Sanders at the rally Tuesday. And I say they're worse than useless because they're engaging in a performative exercise that isn't going to move the dial, isn't going to be passed. But yes, Democrats united should support Medicare for all. They should fight for it tooth and nail. And the progressives who are ostensibly in favor of it need to actually fight for it, which they're completely unwilling to do. So yeah, these are important fights. They should be waged, but not in the half-assed, half-hearted way, at least with respect to Medicare for all that we're seeing people like Jayapal and Sanders engage in that. So really, that's the issue is not just that they're useless because they're promoting a bill that isn't going to pass, but they're promoting it in a way that protects those who will not pass it, those who are part of the problem. That's why they're worse than useless, because they're not taking the fight to their own party. And that's the point earlier made this week. Again, the free-for-all, that means your chance to call me. I tested the phones. They are working. Sometimes I forget to test them. I got to test them. There's some weirdness there with Google, which I don't really understand. We always center. Wish we didn't have to. Wish we could do anything but center the victims of the Israeli-American Holocaust in Gaza and more broadly Palestine, right? Because it's not just Gaza, it's also the West Bank, where Israel and the United States are killing Palestinians. But most specifically, Gaza right now is the point where the victims are most concentrated. 7 members, this is from Anadolu Ajansi. I don't know if I have an updated total death count for you. The numbers have been all over the place this morning, so sometimes it takes a few days for the smoke to clear, literally, the smoke from the bombs that Israel drops on women, children, and men, innocents. The bombs that they drop, the smoke takes some time to clear, and we don't know just how many people they've killed. So this is just a report from the Turkish news service. 7 members of family among 15 Palestinians killed in Israeli airstrikes across Gaza. So just a terrible, terrible situation. We also have starvation in Gaza. Not clear if there have been deaths. Certainly some babies, children, stillborns seem all very likely to have been victims of the weaponization of food, the use of starvation as a weapon, which is a complete violation of any kind of humanitarian rules of engagement, Geneva Conventions, and the like. We are seeing from the UN News, got this email today, worst case scenario unfolds as brutal aid blockade threatens mass starvation. So There's really, again, no light at the end of the tunnel for the people of Gaza, except for an onrushing locomotive that is being engineered by Trump and Netanyahu. And the tracks laid by Harris Biden and many other members of the Democratic and Republican Party, many other, quote, leaders, unquote, leading in the most terrible possible direction. Just a little bit more, 2 months into this devastating aid blockade of Gaza, food has run out. And what you're seeing, of course, is what you expect, is the folks so desperate for food and water, they're fighting with each other. They're fighting, rather than united against the common enemy, they're fighting with each other. That's one of the things I don't want us to do here on Halitics. I don't want us to fight amongst each other. If we're united, to the extent I can unite people in support of a truly progressive, populist economic agenda, that's my goal. That's what I want. I don't want to fight over, silly, or what I would call less relevant, less critical identity issues. Maybe silly is the wrong word. I shouldn't have used it. It depends, right? I mean, some of the fights aren't silly at all. Others, I think, are. But I think what we really need to recognize is that no one should be hungry, right? We can say that in Gaza, no one should be hungry. And in the United States, no one should be hungry. And we have enough food. Probably there isn't much hunger, but we could also say no one should be homeless. We should also say no one should be without health care. And in America, lots of people are homeless and lots are without health care. Let's get those issues addressed first. Let's unite behind universal health care. Let's unite behind housing as a human right. And then we can, maybe delve into some of the thornier issues. That would certainly be my recommendation to the left. Again, if you want to join me, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe. Join us on Halitics on Facebook. That's a great place for the back and forth. The one thing I really insist on is in Halitics is some level of civility and the personal attacks, the insults, drinking the Kool-Aid again, that kind of stuff, that makes it harder. That makes it more challenging to build a better country, a better world. It makes it much harder. So just don't do that. I don't know why some people can't restrain themselves. You get angry. I'm probably the worst person to say that because so often I lash out. So often I react in ways that are very counterproductive. But I would just think when you're on a Facebook page, you really should be able to not insult the other posters. Go ahead, insult Trump all you want. Insult whoever you want who's like a bold-faced name. But hey, we're in this together when it comes to, say, a group like Halitics. We're all, I think, trying to build something. Maybe we have slightly different strategies and tactics, but the goals should be the same. And I think often they are. By the way, my goal should have been to shave yesterday and comb my hair. So I apologize for the slightly unkempt look. Today, I will be leaving for New York, so I will not be on Monday. There'll be a day off Monday, and then Tuesday return with Arlen Tuesday, which will air at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which will go live 1 p.m., not at 2, and I'll keep you posted about that as well. All right, Israel and the United States. Now, we have the same numbers, not changed since yesterday in terms of the confirmed number of dead, 52,418. That's been revised upwards in various places. This is the absolute most conservative, lowest number, the one that's most certain to be accurate, but a lowball number, right? So they're certain this number have been killed, and almost definitely many more. But that number is a hard yes, a tragic yes, and obviously there's no pass for Trump whatsoever. We gave him a pass for a couple, through the first, month and a few weeks of his administration where there was a ceasefire. I had some optimism. Always say that. That's gone. Through yesterday, Trump and Netanyahu have killed over 2,300 Gazans, with well over 1,000 children, almost certainly part of that terrible, terrible legacy of this administration, this president, and the previous as well. So I got some video for you. Let me just see if I can make sure I've got the right video. I think this is what I really wanted to lead with. And I said, Van Hollen, I think he would have won. I think he would have been he'd be the president now if he had been the Democratic nominee. I don't think he could have gotten the nomination, to be honest with you. There were a lot of factors. It was considered to be, and he, as far as I know, he wasn't even trying. But I've tried to come up with, he wasn't interested. He wasn't, maybe he was interested. He wasn't an identified contender. The way you have people like Gavin Newsom, AOC now for 28, and others were bandied about. Van Hollen wasn't in 24, and he isn't for 28. And it's odd to me in this one regard. I don't see anyone who would be a more formidable challenger to the Republicans. I truly don't. I mean, Van Hollen consistently comes across, at least to me, not perfect by any means. He is ultimately a relatively centrist Dem on many issues. I have a lot of concerns about him, but still, to my way of thinking, to my observations, Senator Chris Van Hollen, U.S. Senator, comes across as more authentic, more credible, more likable, and certainly more intelligent as well than just about any other Democrat or anybody else in national politics today. So the fact that he's not mentioned means one of a couple of things. One is that he's just simply completely not interested in running for president. And that may be the case. And what's consistent with that is two, which is I think he would be unacceptable to the Democratic elites, even though he was, I believe, head of the House re-election campaign, congressional re-election team back when I was in Monterey, I think 2012, before he ran for U.S. Senate. Even though he's very popular here in Maryland, he has taken certain positions that Democratic elites just don't like. Examples, he actually was against the Trans-Pacific Partnership when he ran. I believe his first term was 2014. He ran then. He was against it. That was not the popular position. Maybe it was 2016. It was probably 2016. That was not the popular position. Hillary Clinton was very, very grudgingly, finally came out against it. But she loved the TPP. She wanted NAFTA on steroids. And so did many other corporate Dems. So Van Hollen came out against it. And that was a kind of a blow to getting that passed. Obviously, it was the death blow. The death knell was Trump's election. That was not a popular position. Against free trade, not a popular position. Being for labor, American workers, was not a popular position, is not a popular position in the Democratic Party. Van Hollen has not been what I would call anywhere near an A when it comes to standing firmly against the Israeli-American genocide. But he's probably a B minus, C plus, which is much better than virtually every other Democrat. He spoke out consistently. He was a leader in the Senate when it came to bills to, along with Sanders, to stop stop supporting Israel. He was a leader. He is a leader in that fight. That is not a popular position among the Democratic elites. That is simply doesn't go very far with them. Van Hollen is not as malleable. He's not as easily led by the nose as virtually every other Democrat. So I just think he couldn't get the backing of the party. And that may well be why he hasn't even considered running. He knows it. He knows he can't get their backing. He has really shown, I believe, true leadership when it comes to Maryland man Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was seized illegally by federal agents and deported to his home country of El Salvador on the false claim, based on the false claim, almost certainly false. I mean, maybe it's possible. I mean, we don't know. It's so hard to prove a negative, but there doesn't appear to be any more, than the most flimsiest of possible evidence that he was involved with some type of criminal gang in his home country. Let's play. This is a really great video from Al Jazeera, which I recorded for you, and I'm going to play it, and I'm going to interrupt it at various points, but this came from Al Jazeera a couple days ago.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia is no longer being held at a notorious maximum security prison in San Salvador known as CICOT. That was one of the pieces of information Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen was able to discover during his trip to El Salvador to investigate his constituents' well-being.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. I looked into that because, you know what, I was a little bit pleased, surprised, and also somewhat skeptical. Is it indeed true that Abrego Garcia is no longer in that horrible CICOT prison? And CBS News Baltimore reported the same thing. I don't have that story headline for you, but I'm going to accept it. Yes. I mean, if Van Hollen says it, if Al Jazeera says it, if CBS News says it, I'm going to believe it until I have reason not to. So there's Van Hollen, of course, getting a hug from folks when he returned from El Salvador. Let's play some more of this clip from Al Jazeera.
Upon his return, Van Hollen argued that this case was about more than one man not receiving due process.
It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America.
I want to stop it there for a sec because I'm making the point again. I am a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat, and I kind of blew that because I had gotten to a little bit of a tiff, shall we say, with Alan Minsky. And I guess he asked me if I was a Democrat or something. And I said, I'm not a neo-lib. I'm not a warmonger. So no, but no, I am. I am a registered Democrat. I'm not registered with the Green Party. I'm a registered Democrat for all my harsh criticism. I made a decision, in terms of the primary process. It makes sense for me to at least be able to vote in primaries for more progressive Democrats. I didn't vote for Jamie Raskin in the last primary in 24. I didn't vote for him. I mean, I voted for a Green in the general, and I didn't vote in the primary at all for Raskin. I didn't vote for anybody in that primary, but I did vote for Mark Elrich, the county executive, and I'm kind of a little bit, I guess, but that would have been 22. I'm a little bit disappointed, certainly in Elrich in certain areas, and most particularly his refusal to say no to the Maryland Israeli Development Center. That's a terrible stain on his record. But yeah, I am a Democrat. So here's Van Hollen. And when you listen to him, honestly, tell me if I'm wrong. Post in your comments to this program. I'll read those tomorrow, next week if you post there, or just call in 240-242-5646. Doesn't he seem pretty impressive compared to the average politician? A little more plain spoken, certainly more authentic. When I say authentic, it's like he says what you think he really believes, and he does answer questions. He does respond to the concerns of his constituents. He doesn't change the subject or answer the question he wants to answer.
The senator also gave his side to a tweet from the El Salvadoran president. Nayib Bukele had posted photos of the meeting and said that the two were sipping margaritas in the tropical paradise of El Salvador. Van Hollen said that Salvadoran government officials had placed glasses garnished with cherries and salt on their table.
I mentioned the fake margarita scandal. They actually wanted to have the meeting by the side of the pool, right, in the hotel. Just right. I mean, this is a guy who's been in CICOT. This is a guy who's been detained. They want to create this appearance that life was just lovely for Kilmar, which of course is a big fat lie.
A U.S. judge had specifically prohibited Abrego Garcia from being deported to El Salvador. Nonetheless, that's what happened on March the 15th. Initially, the Trump administration admitted his deportation was the result of an administrative error.
So let me just stop it. So what the reporter tells you, hey, they deported him despite an order that he be kept in the United States, right? That you don't deport him until there's some sort of process. There wasn't any process. Then the Trump administration first says, well, we made an error. Sorry. But there's nothing we can do about it. Let's play more of that.
Argues that since it's decided that Abrego Garcia is a gang member and a terrorist, any previous court protection he had from deportation has now been overruled.
So they're just saying, hey, you know what? He's in a gang. That's it. That's the end of it. He's in MS-13. So scary. Latino. El Salvador. We're all happy. So who cares about those pesky court orders? That's the Trump administration position. This is the kind of fascistic behavior that I think American people really do find, on balance, horrific, wrong. It's a fight Democrats need to lead against the administration, and they need to be united. And they're not talking about it, except for Van Hollen. And why not? Well, we were really afraid. A lot of Americans said they didn't like open borders. Not that there ever were. But Americans want mass deportations. But as soon as you delve into that question, do they want mass deportations? You realize, well, they don't want people just rounded up and thrown, in overseas prisons. That's not something the American people want. But this is also an education moment. This is a time when the Democrats can say, yeah, we get it. There are real problems with wages. There's no question that there's a labor surplus in certain areas. And as a result of that surplus, wages are too low, partly because of the surplus. There's other factors as well. This is an education moment where Democrats can point to this clown on the screen and say, he's doing everything possible to make life, worse for average, everyday Americans. And even if you think it's to your benefit to deport, foreign workers because a reduction in the supply of labor will lead to a rise in the price of labor, even if you believe that, do you really want government agents just simply seizing people, putting them in a plane and dropping them off in some dictatorship? I don't think so, although I know the El Salvador's leader is called president. So this could be an education moment too. Democrats, as far as I know, aren't doing much educating. But Van Hollen is, credit to Chris Van Hollen.
I don't know why you'd want to keep him, but we got a little biography of him. Not a very innocent guy.
Donald Trump followed that comment up on Friday with a post purporting to show a gang tattoo on Abrego Garcia's knuckles. The administration has repeatedly made fun of the entire case on social media. In addition, even though multiple courts have found...
By the way, I want to say something about that. We're going to get really into that whole thing with the MS-13 tattoo, allegedly, on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's hand, and how phony it is, how fake that claim is. But one point I want to also make is, there's a lot of snark from Trump and his supporters, and they make fun of people and who question them. I don't think it's a good idea for Democrats to respond to that in kind. Just the facts, ma'am, please. Just present the evidence that supports your view. And I do think you persuade many more people. I don't believe that the mocking from Trump and his supporters actually does go over that well. I think there's a recognition among many, many millions of American people that the Democratic Party is not their friend, that the Democratic Party policies, especially free trade, neoliberalism, and endless war, have hurt working people. That's a fact. That's not something that is disputable. That is the reality. And so, desperate to turn things around, many went to Trump, went to the Republicans. If you engage in the same kind of low-grade, low-rent behavior as Trump engages in, you're not going to win people back. You want to take the higher road. You want to make the argument that your policies will be better, that you're not going to tear families apart, that you will take the steps necessary to raise wages in this country and reduce wealth and income inequality. That's what Democrats should be doing.
Garcia received no due process before his deportation. It argues it's now powerless to do anything to bring him back. And that is the actual issue, say opponents of Abrego Garcia's deportation. Whether the Trump administration can deport anyone at once to a foreign jail without due process and then argue it's too late for the president or the U.S. justice system to intervene. Shia Bertansi, Al Jazeera, Washington.
All right, so that's a very good, very, relatively succinct description of what's going on. That's April 30th, and I know this case has been going on throughout the month of April and even before. And it is still very, very important. And it's something that Democrats should be focusing on. The media needs to focus on much more. There have been stories. It's not completely buried like the Holocaust is in Gaza, but it's not getting enough attention either. And again, the Democrat Party has a lot of power, a lot of, obviously, influence. And if they talked about this, it would get more attention by the corporate media. I would note also that this is the kind of behavior that I would strongly counsel Democrats to consider impeaching Trump for. Flouting Supreme Court orders, illegally, unconstitutionally kidnapping people, that is clearly a felony. We talked about this before in impeach. This is where Democrats, of course, fall down completely. They'll impeach you because you don't want to promote an endless war with Russia, right? Remember, because Trump was held up shipment of arms to Ukraine for a few months, he was impeached for that. That you get, you don't want to spend billions and trillions of dollars of taxpayer money on an endless, deadly war with Russia that makes everyone less safe, that destroys a Eastern European country almost completely. Yeah, we'll impeach you for that. You kidnap people in this country legally, or in some cases, there's an argument that Abrego Garcia didn't have the right paperwork, what have you. You kidnap people in broad daylight, you flout court orders. Go ahead. We're not going to impeach. We'll send one U.S. senator down there. That's about it. Trump repeated, I don't want to say he's lying. I mean, he may really have believed. It's hard to honestly, to give him too much benefit on this one. But I'm going to try, because I always try to be fair, especially the people I don't agree with. Trump claimed in an interview, which I'm not going to play the interview, but he claimed on ABC that Kilmar Abrego Garcia had MS-13 tattooed on his hand. And I really wanted to look into that closely. Did he really claim that? Was that what he claimed? Because if you look at the actual image that Trump shared on X, it so obviously looks to be Photoshopped. And that's what he was told by the ABC News reporter. He said, hey, it was Photoshopped. They didn't want to go on and on about it, but he just said, hey, it was a Photoshop. Maybe Trump didn't realize it was Photoshopped, or maybe, and I'm going to make another sort of excuse for Trump, maybe he knew that the MS-13 that you see in the image that is so clear. I mean, it's a very poor photoshopping job. If the goal was to try to persuade you that this man had MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, when you look at the actual image shared, you can see if that was really what they were trying to present, if whoever shared this really thought people were going to believe that this is an actual image of Kilmar Garcia's hand, I think that they are very incompetent. because it's so obvious. Look at that MS-13. It's so clear. It's like someone typed it on the image, right? It looks like something I would put together. Look at how much darker those letters are. They don't look like tattoos. The pot leaf, the smiley face, the cross, and the skull, those look like tattoos. They faded over time. MS-13, it's like someone took printed a picture up on their printer, on their inkjet of his hand, stuck it in a typewriter, and then typed in MS-13 over the knuckles. And I really wanted to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. Like, well, did he really say it was tattooed on? I wouldn't say I wanted to. I try to be fair to people. And here's what Trump said. This is the hand of the man that the Dems feel should be brought back to the U.S. because he said to find this in person. They said he is not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed onto his knuckles. And 2 highly respected courts found that he was a member of MS-13, beat up his wife, etc. All right. I will address those latter charges. But you can't really interpret what Trump is saying as anything but that he actually has the letters M, S, and the number 13, the numbers 13 tattooed on his knuckles. Well, it just so clearly does appear to anybody, I think, that that's not a tattoo. That's something somebody just put on, in their Photoshop or GIMP editor. I use GIMP because it's free. But yeah, I could put those letters on to look just like that. Doesn't mean it's tattooed there. So again, the argument that I thought Trump may have been trying to make, but not very persuasively, certainly not very cogently, is not that he really has MS-13 on his knuckles, because anyone can see he doesn't, but that they're illustrative, that those letters and numbers were put on the image subsequently, after the picture was taken. They were added to illustrate what the tattoos actually mean. So the M is for marijuana. The S is for the smiley face, right? S smiley. The 1 is for the cross. I don't know why a cross would be a 1. I guess because there's like a dagger, or it's like a line, a straight line. So that's like a 1, although it's not a 1. And then the skull somehow reflects the word 3, the number 3. I don't get that either. I don't know, why is a skull a 3? But according to apparently some ICE agent, the marijuana, smiley, cross, and skull together are MS-13 symbols. So maybe somehow Trump thought when he said, well, they're tattooed on his fingers, he really meant, no, there's a marijuana leaf and there's a skull and a cross and a smiley face, and together they make MS-13. I don't know. Maybe that was kind of what he was trying to say. It's clearly not what he did say. I'll give him something else. Maybe he really, truly believed that Photoshop image accurately depicted Mr. Abrego Garcia's hand, but we know it didn't. And here's the actual picture. I think maybe, I'm not sure if that was taken where, when, but obviously in the United States, you can see the exit sign. It doesn't say salida, which I think is exit in Spanish, which is what it would say if he was in El Salvador. If that was taken, oh, this was taken before he got the gang tattoos. So obviously he doesn't have MS-13 tattooed on his hand. Just he doesn't. And no one who's studied this thinks he does. The excuse for Trump is, well, he doesn't, but the symbols, the actual tats reflect it. But they don't, because, and again, more research, experts, gang experts say, no, you don't tattoo your gang affiliation. Nobody's going to do that. They're not stupid. If you started doing that, then people would arrest you and they would deport you forthwith. That's not how they identify themselves. So, no. And plenty of people get those tattoos, and they aren't, they're not necessarily gang members. I mean, some people who are gang members, they have lots of tattoos. Some people who are NBA players have lots of tattoos. They're not gang members. They're basketball players. You watch a soccer match, they're so inked up, those guys. They're not gang members. How could they be? They're playing junior league soccer by the time they're 13. They've got minders everywhere to make sure they don't get into trouble because they're too valuable. They're valuable properties. They could mean many millions of dollars to whatever team in the UK or Germany or Spain or whoever drafts them. They're not gang members, but they sure got a lot of ink. David Beckham, totally covered with tats. So Trump also says, well, and you know, I did a double take where Trump says he's been found by 2 courts to be a member of MS-13. I believe that is complete falsehood. I found no evidence of that. Here's what Lawfare says about that allegation, the allegation that that he's a member of the gang at all. Not just that, I mean, the only thing we have, at least as far as I can tell, is that Lawfare has reports. This is April 15 this year. It's an allegation. There's no court finding. There's no decision. There's no conviction. There's an allegation. And what was that allegation? It came from double hearsay that a subsequently suspended police detective, I believe the police detective was suspended because he tried to may have extorted sex, tried to anyway, from a suspect. So he said, hey, you don't want to go to jail? Have sex with me. And the allegation wasn't like, hey, I talked to him, he said he was a member of MS-13. I mean, that wouldn't be hearsay at all if it's by the statement by the actual suspect. No. According to that detective, he was talking to an informant, and that informant told him that another individual had said that Abrego Garcia was in MS-13. So that's the double hearsay. It's a report from an informant of what another person said. That's completely totally unacceptable as evidence and would be dismissed out of any court of law. So the idea that you can deport somebody who's under court order not to be deported based on that allegation clearly violates the law. And again, where are the Democrats? Why aren't they, except for Chris Van Hollen, demanding not only the release of Abrego Garcia, but impeachment? All right, 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. Now, there is this story, right? Now, this is from the media. This isn't, and the media is covering Abrego Garcia. This is the very progressive media outlet Common Dreams. And I really have several different minds about this story. I want to talk about it a little bit. I think, first of all, it's a little bit, look, do I think Trump is a danger to democracy? I do. Do I think our democracy is on life support? I think it is, if it's still alive at all. But I don't think it's just because of Trump. You know, I mean, obviously, when this country is engaged in horrific wars, because the foreign policy team of Joe Biden, the Democrat, is deeply embedded in the military-industrial complex, that right there tells me we don't have much of a democracy. That tells me that the decision whether to spend our money on killing isn't being made by an independent agent who's whose loyalty is to what's best for the country, who puts the nation first, but rather to people who put their own self-interest first and those of their clients. Avril Haines, Lloyd Austin, and Anthony Blinken were all people who had very deep, close ties to weapons manufacturers. And they prevailed on Joe Biden. I don't know that he needed much prevailing, but they cajoled him into supporting these deadly, destructive wars that have made us all less safe. Well, that's not democracy, period. End of story. Most Americans want Medicare for all, and we would be, without question, better off. But we don't have it. That's not democracy. So we don't have a democracy. We didn't have a democracy. Do I like the fact that Trump is ordering the defunding of NPR and PBS? No, I don't. I think in a healthy, functioning democracy, the government plays a role, an important role, in funding independent media. I think that's very, very important. When I say independent, I mean media that's independent of corporation sponsorships, corporate sponsorships. I think that's true. It's bad that Trump is ordering the defunding of NPR and PBS. That said, let's not delude ourselves into thinking these are some kind of democratic champions. These are some kind of pro-worker, pro-people, populist groups. NPR and PBS are basically elitists. They serve a small cadre of highly educated, upper middle class to affluent people, and their political bent is corporatist, but somewhat identitarian. So they tend to promote, and we've heard clips of it, they promote a lot of identity politics, but they really don't brook much challenge to the corporatocracy. They have covered the climate catastrophe, which you don't find in any of the other TV or radio stations, except for maybe, when I was broadcasting, maybe on Pacifica. But, none of the big media outlets, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, they barely cover. I don't know, is MSNBC? I doubt it. So there is that value. But on the other hand, I saw this, NPR and PBS get a lot of funding from Exxon. And you do have to wonder, well, does that money from Exxon impact in some way on how they report on the climate catastrophe? You'd think it doesn't. You'd hope it doesn't. But this is what I think. And this is a suspicion. This is not based on hard research or evidence. My suspicion is that what you get when you watch NPR, when you listen to NPR, you watch PBS, when you hear a report on the climate crisis, the climate holocaust, call it what you will, that you get a lot of data that describes just how hot it's getting, how much hotter it is now than it was 5 years ago, and how much hotter 5 years ago it was than it was 10 years ago, and so on. So they definitely report the data that proves our planet is getting hotter. But what they may not do is draw that very close connection between our use of fossil fuels and the resulting higher temperatures. I'm sure it's mentioned, it's not ignored, but there's kind of an implication by the Exxon sponsorship of these stories that Exxon can be part of the solution. I remember these BP ads, and they used to have like BP, and they'd show like what looked like water. Actually, was supposed to be gasoline, but you kind of thought it might be water bubbling, like it was, sort of this clean energy. We can be part of the solution. No, you can't. You are the problem. So there is a little bit of greenwashing going on there. But all that said, yes, it is really bad. We should have government fund independent media. But to say this is the proof that, or this is the, this is the canary that really is, in the coal mine, this dead canary, the end of public financing of media is the death knell for democracy. I think that overstates and understates the reality that we pretty much lost our democracy anyway. So it's understating that in that they're overstating the impact of this particular policy by Trump. They're overstating its impact because it's pretty de minimis in the end, especially because these outlets haven't promoted real change. And it's also overstating it. It's overstating that how much harm it will do, and it's understating it because we've already basically lost our democracy. So they're minimizing just how undemocratic America is today. So yeah, I think it's important. I think it's a relevant story. I think it should be covered, but I don't think it should be presented as apocalyptically as it is. I don't think most Americans like what Trump has done with respect to Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I don't think most Americans want to see all funding for independent media cut. Maybe some do. Maybe there's more support for those policies than I thought. I don't think that's where most Americans are. I also don't think it's a huge issue for most people. I'll tell you what is important to people: having enough to eat, being able to pay the rent, being able to get treated if you're sick or injured or your child needs emergency treatment. That's what Americans care about. Jobs. And it's understandable why they would. Because most people in this country have seen, at best, consistent but no improvement in quality of life in terms of purchasing power for 60 years, for 55 years since the beginning of the 1970s. There's been virtually no improvement. And for many people, perhaps for most, there's been a decline in the quality of life, certainly relative to others, certainly relative to the billionaire class. So when the New York Times comes out with a story that despite the fact we saw a contracting economy in the first quarter, right, which is January through March, we saw the economy actually shrunk slightly. The total output, GDP, shrunk. But at least according to the New York Times, there's some question, right? Some are saying, well, this isn't really strong job growth. I'm not even so sure it's strong. I'm going to question that. But according to the New York Times, U.S. job growth remained strong in April. And that's a slight dip from March, which would mean it was strong in March. So regardless of whether the economy itself is shrinking, if jobs continue to be available to people and more of them, then I just don't see you defeating Trump, at least without a real vision for the future, for a better future. Is the job growth that strong as the Times describes it? Yeah, I question that. I know there's a lot of back and forth among economists because they can never agree, and these numbers are always revised. They revise them up, they revise them down. But here's the chart. It's kind of a little bit hard to read, but you can see at the very right, there's the orange line that reflects the 177K jobs in April that were apparently added. So there were more jobs than the month before. And if you look closely, and I'm going to actually zoom in on this in a minute, you can see that March had slightly more. But this doesn't look so strong to me. If you look earlier in the graph, the before 25, it's the Biden administration. The hiring numbers were much stronger in 21, 22. Now, there's a caveat. Obviously, we're recovering from the COVID low. This seems like okay growth to me. This seems like it's fine. It's not great. It's okay. And I'm fine with that. I don't want a overheated economy. I don't think that's what's best. What I think is best is that everyone has enough and no one has too much. Steady growth in the number of jobs available. Steady growth in wages for working people. Steady increase in the amount of taxes paid by the wealthy. That will lead to a better America. And you could even conceivably see total amount paid by wealthy people go up as well as a result of the tariffs. But those are also very likely to be regressive. So this is not ideal by any means. And that's what Democrats should talk about. They should say, okay, well, maybe the tariffs will lead to more job growth than we had originally claimed. They will. But without progressive tax rates, without raising top marginal rates on the wealthy, this will impact worst on poor people, on struggling people. And yes, there will be more jobs in manufacturing. There will be more blue collar work. And those folks who get those jobs will be better off. But lots won't. So we have to make sure that the economy works for everyone. That's the message that the Democrats can win with. It's not one they're going to ever impart. It's not one that they're going to use, but that's the one that they should use. Now, here's the wrong message. This is just an absolutely bonkers. I saw this on Facebook, and it's, I believe, some kind of, because there's all these accounts where people pay. So I believe this is some sort of a paid ad by some, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know who this person is. I don't believe they're a friend of mine. They have a blue check. I thought blue checks were for X. Maybe, is this X? Maybe this must be X, right? Because the blue check, I guess, would be X. And maybe I should, but it looks to me also like it's, I don't know. Anyway, whoever posted this, wherever they posted it, the argument is, hey, DEI is great because West Virginia wouldn't have a single 4-lane highway if it weren't for it. The Appalachian Regional Commission is one of the original diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So my response is, wait, that sounds good. No 4-lane highways? That sounds appealing in a time of ecocide and climate collapse. This is not the right message, folks, to extol the value of 4-lane highways. I get it. Of course you want highways. This government responsibility is roads, but this seems like an odd way to promote DEI, doesn't it? We have more commerce. We have more for-profit purchases and sales, business. It's strange to me. We're in a time when we need to be consuming less, when we should cut back on our travel, when we want to make each community beautiful and a lovely place to live. One of the reasons we all want highways, we all want airports, is because the communities in which we live, we've befouled to such a great degree that we want to get away from them. The goal, certainly for progressives, certainly I believe for Democrats, should be let's clean up our little corner of the globe. Let's cultivate our own garden. 4-lane highways aren't the way to do that. It's a strange message. It's a counterproductive message. All right, 240-242-5646. Getting towards the end of the program, I do want to remind you, yes, no Halitics Monday, and I will be on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with Arlen. Don't forget, also, if you haven't yet done so, click subscribe now. Got some nice new subscription numbers, and they're going up with all deliberate speed, if you will. And also, yeah, subscribe now. I already gave you the Facebook, but click like too. Yeah, there's that thumbs up. Love the likes. Love the likes. I've been involved with Code Pink. I think they're a great group. I want to play this video. I'm kind of two minds. Is this really helpful? They are confronting in this video the defense minister, I believe is his title. We were sort of debating this. I'm pretty sure it's defense minister in Israel, Ben-Gvir. That's his last name, Ben-Gvir. I think his first name is David, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, he was in Washington, and Code Pink is there to greet him. So let's play the clip.
Ben-Gvir, you're a war criminal. You're a war criminal, Ben-Gvir.
So stop it right there to Chowder. You're a war criminal, Ben-Gvir. He is. There's no question about it. This is in, I guess, the basement of the Capitol. I believe that's where they were able to get this footage. Maybe it was somewhere else. I'm not sure. You're a war criminal, Ben-Gvir. Absolutely, you're a terrorist.
You are a war criminal. You will kill my family in Gaza. You killed 50. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So now he's saying you kill our children. That's false. Okay, right there. The claim that Ben-Gvir is making. So let me just say it this way. The Code Pink activist is saying you kill our children. That's true. Ben-Gvir is the defense minister in Israel. He is responsible, as much as just about anybody else, for what the Israeli military makes for Netanyahu and Trump. But he's right there responsible for these atrocities that we talk about on a daily basis on Halitics. He's absolutely responsible. The flip side of that is Ben-Gvir is yelling at this activist, you kill our children, implying, I suppose, that he was part of the Hamas attack. Well, he wasn't. Nothing to do with Hamas. He's a Palestinian who's saying, hey, stop killing our children. I didn't have anything to do with it. I wasn't part of that. I didn't plan it. You're taking out your vengeance, you're taking out your anger, whatever, your shame at failing to protect Israel. You're lashing out at us, you've decided to completely wipe us off the planet, in part because there was a crime committed on Israeli soil, but also because that's just been the Israeli plan for 80 years now, 75 years, 78 years, whatever it is. That's been part of your grand master plan, to seize complete control of this region and to evict or kill the people who live. Now, I don't want to be too blunt because I don't know that in 1948. I don't believe that. I think, there may have been some hardliners who said this is Israel's for the Jews, Palestine's for the Jews. I'm sure there were some, but I think this is something that you see happens over time. Israel becomes a more powerful country in large part because of sponsorship from the United States. People there want more land and they push out, and they also have an origin story, which is to a significant degree accurate, which is the country was founded on the ashes of the 5 to 6 million Jews the Nazis killed. So we're entitled. We're victims. We're the victims. So you hear this over and over, and you become more and more callous. You become more and more confident of your own righteousness, your own justness, and the immorality of everyone else who doesn't stand with you 100%. And it leads to genocide. But when Ben-Gvir yells, you kill our children, that's just a flat-out lie.
You Zionist mud. You scum. You scum.
So does this help, though? I mean, that's a question. I mean, yeah, he should be confronted. Yes, you need to call him out. Yes, he's a disgusting person. But I don't see how this... And I understand the anger. My gosh, I feel that. I get angry. I lash out, too. And afterwards, I'm like, my God, that didn't really didn't really serve me. Didn't really do anything good for me. So I have to ask, I'm part of Code Pink. I lobby with them. I talk to, and I question, you can lobby a corrupt institution like Congress, but it's still corrupt at the end of the day. They're not likely to do what's right. I don't see evidence that there's any real likelihood they're going to do what's right. So I get to a plan B, which is we have to build an alternative. We have to come up with something different than this two-party structure that is so harmful, does so much damage, and has cost us our freedoms and our democracy. All right, that's going to do it. That has been your Friday free-for-all. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope if you like what you heard, like what you saw, you'll subscribe if you haven't already done so. You'll click like, and you'll keep coming back for more. I take your calls because I think this is all about dialogue. This is all about building something together. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be back Tuesday.